Is there anybody else left in the waiting room, Veronica?
No, there's 12 people in the meeting so far.
All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. It's 1:35. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Veronica, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Okay. When I call your name, please say yes. Please let me know that you're here. And please, for the record, say it out loud. Aaliyah Armstrong, Faith Dayton, Teresa DeSimone,
Here.
Jacqueline Williams, Joanna Olson,
Here.
Paul Davis, Noemi Guerrero, oh, Noemi, your sound isn't working. So for the record, Noemi is here and present. Just her sound isn't working. Karen Lovato, Brady Nord,
Here.
Amanda Archer,
Here.
Judy Albert,
Here.
Sage Wolf,
Here.
Dan McIntyre,
Here.
Natalie Shepard, Sandra Stolfi,
Here.
We have a quorum. We have 9 and we require a quorum of 8.
Thank you, Veronica.
And I'm admitting Jacqueline Williams right now. So
Okay.
I will change hers to present.
Okay. We'll move on to the next topic. Is there any public comment that you received, Veronica?
And I received no advance public comment.
Okay, is there any public comment from anybody that's present? Not seeing any public on any comments that are not agendized. We're going to move on to the next one, is approval of minutes from the May 15th COC board meeting.
I wasn't able to put together the minutes. I just didn't get to it this time around. So we'll present them at the next meeting.
Okay, we can deal with that. We'll move on to reports and presentations, updates from local jurisdictions. Do you have anything, Veronica, for the county, since Karen and Megan are not here?
I was not given any announcements to share by either one of them, but I do see that Mo Mulheron is here. Mo, do you have anything that you'd like to add as far as the county? Usually the spaces for county projects and different things regarding homeless services in the county. She may be away from her desk.
We'll come back in a second.
Okay.
Is there anybody from the city of Ukiah? I do not see anybody. And I don't see anybody from the city of Fort Bragg or the city of Point Arena. So I guess that second came quick. We'll go to standing committee reports. Strategic planning. I'll give a brief update. I see that the topic is on the agenda down below, so I'm not going to go into much detail. We met a couple weeks ago about the governing board seat redesign, draft 2.0. We had a long conversation on this in that meeting, and we'll go into that more in detail under the board governance discussion down below, and then we will carry that over into probably the next meeting as well. That's all I have. for strategic planning. Is there any questions? Okay, not hearing you. We're going to move on to shelters and solutions. I don't see Angelica. Judy, I think you're on the committee, right?
Yes, and it was very helpful because Veronica attended that meeting and she forwarded some policies that Angelica is going to look through so that some more policies can be created for the issue at hand regarding congregate shelters.
Okay. So more to come on that, Judy, then?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Is there any questions for shelters and solutions? Any public comment? Not hearing you. We're going to move on to coordinate entry discharge planning. Sage?
I don't have anything super specific other than Nutmeg, the coordinated entry list manager. Our new agency is on board and we're getting started, and so meeting with them to do get them rolling. And other than that, I don't think I have anything specific. Veronica, help me if there's anything you can think of.
We've been actively, do you want to talk about the transfer policy?
Okay, yeah, I feel like we talked about that previously, so it just is right, but so we've been working on and finalized a policy and a process for people who qualify for permanent supportive housing, but for whatever reason opt to go into rapid rehousing or transitional housing instead of PSH. And usually with the hopes that they're not going to need permanent supportive housing, they just need a little bit of help for a short period of time. And then, but what we wanted to put in place was a policy and a process to allow for those people who go into rapid rehousing and it really turns out that they need long-term assistance, that short-term assistance isn't going to be adequate for them. And so we needed a process for them to be able to still get referred into PSH, even though at the time of referral, they technically count as housed. But because they were unhoused prior to go into the and qualified for permanent supportive housing prior to the rapid rehousing or transitional housing project, that they can still be referred into a PSH project. So we've finalized that process. It's getting updated in the coordinated entry policies, which will be brought before this board for just general review, I believe at the beginning of the year.
Thank you, Sage. Is there any questions from the board for Sage? Not hearing any questions for Sage. Is there any public comment on that coordinated entry transfer policy? Or the transfer policy, not coordinated entry? Not hearing anything. We're going to move on to the membership committee. Veronica?
The membership committee met on June 6th, and we reviewed the materials needed for the 2023 MCHSCoC annual membership recruitment event. We'll be having that at our July 17th full membership committee, full membership meeting. And we, so that'll be being released. We're going to dedicate, so sometimes we have a guest presentation at the beginning of our meetings, and the committee agreed it would be a good idea to have our COC orientation, new member orientation done in the beginning of our meeting next month, so that it can be a refresher for those who've been with us for a while, and new for those who are just now joining us. I think we've got quite a few new participants in the COC that it could really warrant, and we could have a good conversation because of the larger group. Additionally, we reviewed a list of documents and resources that the HMIS lead has gathered for a new membership binder, so a binder for new members of the COC, and then also additional one for board members, because there's a bit more information that members need to know than a general member. One of those items that stood out is a COC member contact list. And so that's one of the things that we're working on, and we'll have that to distribute within the near future so that you guys can have each other's information if you don't already. Oh, you're on mute, Dan.
Yeah, I realize it. Any questions from the board on the membership committee report? Any public input on the membership committee report? I'm not hearing. We're going to go on to HMIS performance measurements, which also would be Veronica, since I don't see Aya here.
Yes, and I'm pulling up the agenda just really quick. We met on the 8th. And we discussed quite a bit. We went over our data completeness report. And here in a little bit, I'll also give it, but we gave an update on our 2023 HIT submission. We have finished the HMIS capacity building grant. The last day for that grant is June 30th. So later this week. So that grant is complete, and I'll give that report again a little bit later. We talked about the interest that the committee has on continuing the HMIS lead evaluation. And they're going to revisit that at the next meeting. We gave an update on the changes that we've discussed regarding our HMIS policies and procedures. One of the things that was identified through our work that we've been doing is there are some crimes that we thought were included in our HMIS policies and procedures that aren't, that we felt that would be necessary to update. And those are primarily predatory crimes, elder abuse, child abuse, sex offenses, things like that, and identity theft. So we were really surprised that identity theft wasn't in there. And so these are to list out what would be identified in a background check for HMIS end users. There are exceptions written into the policies, like if someone does have a history of it, what to do. And so that was a big item that was discussed. We also reviewed the HMIS agency agreement that this board recently approved. And we talked about how to solicit participation and buy-in. And our next meeting is July 13th.
Any questions on the board on Veronica's report? Any questions from the board? Is there any public comment or input questions? You're not hearing. We're going to move on, Veronica, to the ad hoc report on the point in time survey result. I see it's attached to the agenda.
Just real quick, we have received some correspondence from our HUD technical assistance review. And we've done some updates. One snag that HUD has ran into is that the housing inventory count, when COCs generated the 2023 report using a file upload that we export out of our HMIS, the HUD system had some errors and it changed some of the funding sources. And so we may have some major changes or fixes that we have to do for our HIC that were caused by a system error. So more on that when we hear more, but I know that our report was affected. And then we created an online pit count volunteer survey, and I've put together the results, and they're in your packet. It's the only attachment, and it's what, 4 or 5 pages? Oh, there is one additional attachment. Does anyone have any questions about it? Would you like me to review it? We got a total of 12 responses. Four from the coastal, 3 from inland north, and 5 from inland south. There was some feedback about wanting more volunteers. There was some issues this last year with the map because our vendor, their system was strained that day because like 90% or something of all of their customers did their point in time count on the same day. And so their system was really stretched thin, and it caused some errors where the map wouldn't load, or things that I had programmed in weren't coming through. And so there was some feedback about that.
All right, so the only question I have, Veronica, I don't know if there's other questions from the board, we'll get to those in a second, is since the system was strained, I mean, they know that the point time counts have to occur in a limited period of time. Are they gonna increase their capacity, or if they're not, then what are we gonna do? Because paying for something like that, where they know the point time counts have to occur and their system can't handle it, doesn't seem like a productive option.
Agreed. I haven't had that conversation with them yet, but I most certainly can when we start talking about what we're going to do for next year.
Yeah, I definitely would. I think it's somewhat, you know, you can blame the system being strained or underutilized. I mean, they know how many clients they have. They know we have limited time to do these. So it gives you like what, one of maybe 7 days to do it on,
10.
which is 10 days. So I don't know, it just seems like they were ill prepared. Is there any other questions from the board?
I had this same thought. You know, a lot of these capacity issues, vendors kind of oversell and underdeliver and don't really know what they can and can't do until we have a trial. And that's what we did. So I think it's just a respectful request to know what are they putting in place to ensure that that doesn't happen again.
Is there any public comment on this topic? Not hearing any public comment, we're going to go on to the next section, which is board governance and protocols, or protocols and governance, since I'm dyslexic today. We're going to have a brief discussion on the governing board seat redesign. I had promised a PowerPoint. Unfortunately, I was out of the office for an extended period of time last week that I did not plan on, so I did not get the PowerPoint done. So we're going to do this conversation minus the PowerPoint, but if the PowerPoint would be more productive, we definitely can bring that back in the following meeting, and or we can continue this conversation to the meeting in July as well. So Sage or Jackie, you guys can correct me if I'm go off the rails here, but originally currently the board's configured with 18 seats. And I know last year that the strategic planning committee had brought back an idea of redesigning the governing seat spots. And when I'm talking about the governing seat spots, we're talking about the voting spots on the board that make up the quorum that allow us to have a meeting, dictate the quorum of how many board members can be on active committees, and also what the seats are configured to. Currently, there's 18 of them. They're set for specific categories. They represent specific groups or individuals on the board. During the end of 2021, we started to see an increase in not being able to hit a quorum for our general membership meetings and for our regular meetings. And through 2022, it got to actually be pretty prolific where we missed 5 meetings because we didn't have a quorum. And we've already missed 1 meeting this year because we didn't have a quorum. So the thought is to make this make it a more flexible option for people to be able to put in a commitment of 3 years to help out on the board, and also really increase activity on the committees by the members, because the committees at the committee levels where the work's actually being done, right? We'll sit here, we'll talk about it, but the work's actually being done at the committee level. Currently, we can have up to 8 board members on each committee, 8 executive board members, or what do you call them? Governing board seat members on the committee. I'll get it spit out actually. But with this redesign, that would be limited to 5. So it would be really encouraging the other members to have a stronger voice in these committees and allow for a better representation of members at the committee level. Now, that might be a long wish because I know that often it is the governing board members that do show up for these committees, you know, with some members that show up, and majority of the time it's the same group of individuals that show up. So the thought behind this, and you guys can see this on the last page of your packet, is that we have effectively 12 members, have the governing board be configured to 12 members. These would be on alternating groups of 3-year terms. Now, what I mean by that is there would be a group of 4 that would have 1 3-year term. Then the next year, you would have another group of 4 that would have another 3-year term. So they would overlap in 3-year segments. So we wouldn't be wiping the whole board every single year. You could have the possibility of having 4 new members join in one particular year. Currently, I don't actually know how it's currently done. Veronica, do you want to touch on that? Because I know some elections we have 2 and some we have more.
There's board terms. Board members have a 3-year term. And so when those 3 years are up, that's whenever we do we revote on that seat.
Yeah. So effectively, we would reset those or adjust those so that we don't lose all of them in one term. And I don't think that's going to be an issue. And the thought is this request originally came when state of California audited us and suggested that we add some other seats that were not mandated by HUD. So what we felt on here after multiple decisions, and this is different than the first round of this, we took the first round and modified it even more to make where there's 4 seats that stay, or not 4 seats that stay, but there's 4 categories of seats that stay on there. One being individuals with lived experience, which is one of the required seats by HUD. The other one would be tribal government. The other one would be housing authority. And then the 4th one would be a housing developer or property manager. And then that would leave 8 representative seats that could be picked out of the right-hand category. And that's not, the right-hand category is probably not an all-inclusive list. We did as much as we could on the right-hand category to not be that. Now, the person with lived experience would be, we note there would be appointed by the lived experience board. The thought would be to add a lived experience board where there's more individuals that would have input to process through that. We've historically had a really hard time keeping somebody with lived experience on the COC board since my time here, and Sage can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to have been very limited and difficult to keep. And I can understand why that is, because it is a time commitment and sometimes it's not the most fun type of meeting to sit in. So that's a high level overview. I'm willing to answer any questions, or anybody else is at the meeting can feel free to inject their thing. We're just trying to find a way to make the COC board more efficient and be able to meet with a smaller quorum and get more activity from the members in the membership committees to where the real work is taking place. Judy, anything?
I would add, can I add?
Yeah, go ahead, Sage.
So I think, part of this is around like, what would a transition look like for what our current board is to what this new model would look like. It's probably on the agenda and I should look, but how many board seats are filled currently?
We
1,
have
2, 3, 4,
three
5,
vacancies.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
So-
11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
We currently have 3 vacant seats, Sage.
Yeah, we have 15. We have 15
Okay.
voting members, not including myself.
Veronica, that's a good question though. So this 12, the county lead agency seat would not be counted among the 12, correct?
That is correct, yes. And then there would actually only be 11 members that have voting privileges unless there's a tie. The chair, it would be a chair and a vice chair spot, and the chair would not have a vote unless there's a tie amongst the other 11 members.
Which hopefully wouldn't happen because there's an odd number, but maybe one person misses a meeting and something weird happens.
Judy?
No, I don't, I think it's going to be an interesting experiment because I think it's been difficult sometimes to fill the committees as it is. And so that's where the plan is that more work will get done. But it'll be interesting to see if there's enough people again to fill those spots. I think that's will be the challenge.
There's nothing perfect. There's no perfect configuration. And
Right.
And when I started this rabbit hole back in 2020, I looked across all the COCs in the state, and some of the largest COCs had the smallest memberships. Like Orange County had like 7 members, and then some of the smallest jurisdictions had the most, and we didn't have the most. Just for record, 18 was not the most. I think the most was like 26 or 27 members.
Board seats, not just members, but board.
Yeah, board seats. Yeah, general board seats, not members. I didn't get into the actual size of the memberships for the COCs. I was just looking at board seats. But yeah, I think it was 26 or 27, which really shocked me because it was a smaller county. I was like, well, that's kind of strange. You would expect like Oakland, Los Angeles, or, Orange County, those counties to have somebody have a larger seat, and they did. Some, split it up by their supervisor districts. They had 7 supervisors, they had 7 COC seats. And there's no way we can make that work in Mendocino County. I mean, that would be too small. So I think I agree with Judy. This is definitely it's not a final solution. There's nothing that says that if this experiment doesn't work, that we don't reconfigure it. And we did not get into the transition of how this works. We wanted to kind of pose the idea, let the board think about it, and then, give us feedback, and then we can come back with a transition and then all the required changes to the governance documents that would be necessary, because there will be some changes, from a technical standpoint to the governance documents.
I'm reviewing the current board term dates. And I see that there's actually 4 board seats that their term expired 5/1 or 4/1 of this year. And so we actually do have 4 that we could use as that first step towards the transition.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? There's no perfect solution to this. I'm gonna just preface that. Because we could go to 12 with 11 members and still not make a quorum. But as the vacant seats go down, we have noticed, as vacant seats have come up, we notice we have been able to see more of a quorum. So it leads me to hope that if there are active members, in the seats, we will be able to meet the smaller quorums.
So the next time this comes back for at the next meeting, will it be back on the agenda as an action item to vote on?
It would probably be on as an action item to vote on to move forward with preparing the changes. We don't want to go through all the work of preparing all the changes and propose, the documents without board approval. So that would probably be the action. And then final approval will come back before general membership committee or general membership meeting for final implementation. Because there's a lot of nuts and bolts stuff we have to do behind the scenes to make sure that this configuration change matches all the documents and all the documents match this new configuration change. Does that make sense, Sage?
Yeah. Just wanting to make sure folks are prepared. And if you have questions or concerns that I know we give people an opportunity to chew on it and think about it and be ready, because we brought this first to the table, oh gosh, it was over a year ago, I think, that we first started talking about it. And really based on like that we're not getting quorums, and so that there's not going to be a perfect solution, but we need to try something in terms of being able to make moves on stuff with how frequently it has been challenging to have a quorum. I'm just hoping you guys will, this is my plug to look at it. And if you have concerns, let's talk it through.
Yeah, reach out to me with questions or, send them to Veronica and she can send them out to the committee. We're open for thoughts, and it's not, like I said, Judy, it is an experiment. I mean, we talked about that in the meeting. I don't think there's a perfect answer or there's a perfect number. I don't think that exists in this world. And I don't feel, that there's a lot of spare time right now, right? A lot of organizations are really trying to focus on surviving and trying to make it past the COVID expenditures that the state, the federal government have been spending versus the need. And then now the expenditures stop, the need's still here. So,
Right.
I know that's a struggle, especially for service-based organizations. It is a struggle for us as well, and in municipalities. I mean, we're seeing it across the board. So sometimes there is a disconnect, and we're just trying to find a solution that we can be part of moving this thing forward. So we'll put that on the agenda for next time, and then we'll discuss it some more. But in between now and July 17th, please feel free to reach out. Let us know.
Dan, I also don't look at it as a loss of focused representation representing particular cohorts, because I think the reality of a small populated county like Mendocino, all of us that do this kind of work have to have multiple hats on all the time. So it's, I don't feel by reducing the number of our governing seats that we're somehow at risk of losing focus on an important cohort or need in our community. I mean, it'd be interesting what the state thinks about those things, but I don't see this as a loss. But that's just my opinion or impression.
Well, I think my only concern is that we have struggled, yes, to get board members to attend, but we haven't had a rousing membership group either. So we might be able to meet a quorum of the board, but then do we, who do we get to be the members who are allegedly going to be working in committees, to do some of the required work?
Well,
I agree with Judy. I think that the truth is we need to develop our second string that's going to take some of our seats. And a good way to do that is to involve them in the committee work. So, think of the times that it ended up where only Judy and one or other person was able to even do the rank order because so many of us were involved with the funding. So that's the other end of
Yeah.
getting the work done.
Mhm.
Our new quorum will be under, if we do this with 12 seats, our quorum would be 7. So we could have up to 6 board members in any meeting and not have a quorum. The only committee that I'm aware of that there's 6 or more board members on is the strategic planning committee. So I think that's really the only one that will be impacted.
All right. More to come next meeting. And then, like I said, there's more work after that. So it's not going to be just a quick, fast turnaround. It's not. There's not a quick solution to this issue. Is there any public comment or questions on the ad hoc committee report? Not the ad hoc committee report. On the discussion about the governing board redesign? Not hearing any on Zoom and not having any previously. We're going to move on
I
to,
have
yes,
I have a thought here because from my experience, working in different counties, people attend the board meetings sometimes, but they know the committees. So it's kind of like I understand everyone is busy with, the duties and responsibilities, but it's something that we will need to think about. Like, for example, I participate in a county where there are like more than 20 members. And when we receive an email where it say like, okay, please, can you attend to this committee? There are not many volunteers. And when you attend to this committee, there are probably like 1, 2 people only. And then of course it's like to do like, for example, a strategic plan, it's overwhelming also for the only 2 people attending the committee. And yes, and so that's my concern, that people maybe can accept to attend to the board member, or maybe we are going to have less members on the board, and then I don't know how we are going to do with attendance to the committees and even attendance to the participation in the board. Yes, I would like, that we think about it and maybe we discuss better, with and we arrive to a consensus what will be the best for Mendocino County, Continuum. Okay.
thank you, Sandra. Yeah, it's definitely, we see that now with the committees. I mean, I sit on multitudes of committees and sometimes Veronica emails me like, hey, I know you normally don't come, but can you come today? Because there's nobody else here. So I do get those emails as well. And I've been on those ranking and rating committees with Judy, where it's Judy, me, and maybe Sandra, that's it, because there's too many conflicts. So definitely lots of questions. Think about this, talk to your other cohorts on the at your office and see what kind of thoughts we can get back in the next meeting. We're gonna move on to funding updates for the board. I'll cover this in one swath. Well, actually, do you have anything on the HUD continuum care funding, Veronica?
Yes. I wanted to share that I've been working back with Teresa on the 2023 COC program grant inventory worksheet to identify if there's any changes in the budget for their 2 renewal applications, as well as the unit configuration for the TRA grant. And we determined at the end that there's no changes to be made. And Teresa is actively gathering the match letters for their grant application. And because HUD has released all of this, it tells me that they're likely going to be releasing the NOFO in the next month or 2. So that I anticipate coming out soonish. Teresa, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think that at this point, I have actually heard from everybody who signs a MOU and a commitment letter. And so I think that we are going to get the match that we need, the 25% of the grant. So super excited about that. Still working with a couple of agencies to get that in today and tomorrow so we can submit it to HUD. But yeah, I think we barely made it this year without Manzanita. They provided a huge match. I think it was like $750,000. And so we did get a match commitment from Tapestry, which was great. So we are going to meet our 25% match this year.
That's all I have for that program.
Is there any questions on the continuum care funds?
For the PSH one, Teresa, do you think, I emailed this to you, but that those people, those organizations that are doing the match, it would be really nice if there was a compiled list of who they are, who their eligible members are, like how many slots they have dedicated to this, and how people access that, because we run into the being a screening location for coordinated entry. Building Bridges gets a lot of folks who then, how do we connect them to the appropriate supportive services for PSH? And that path is kind of, you know, we've met multiple times about it, trying to figure out how do we make this more clear. And since it's fresh in your mind now of who's got your match, who are your match organizations, maybe now is the time we could capture that in a way that can be then spread out better.
Yeah, absolutely. There isn't really that many agencies that provide a match. We have Tapestry, we have MCHC, Ford Street, Stepping Stones, and McCavan. That's it. But I
Hospitality Center?
Nope.
That's weird.
There has never, I don't know if there's ever been a match for Hospitality Center. I could go back and look.
When you say MCHC, who do you mean?
Oh, that's who I mean. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
okay,
apologize.
Sorry, I hear that.
There's 2 MCHCs. Yes. Yes, I mean Mendocino Coast Hospitality Center.
Okay.
Yes, and I do on those commitment letters, they have designated a certain amount. So I could send you kind of like a compiled list of that information. So that you guys can have it, because I know Building Bridges, you know, you want to help people, and a lot of people we pull off of the by name list come through Building Bridges, but
we're a coordinated entry access point.
Yeah.
So support provider, but we're a coordinated entry access point. So we get the people who are trying to access PSH come to the access points.
Right. So what do they then do, you know, after they've accessed PSH and are housed and need that supportive services piece? Is kind of where we're stuck a little bit.
Were you able, and this is, I realize this is about the COC funding, not necessarily about PSH specifically, so I apologize. Are those agencies are primarily like McCavan? Well, maybe not McCavan. It has in the past seemed like it's all very mental health focused, that they have to have Medi-Cal and be in mental health services to be able to access those supportive services for PSH. And but it sounds like with you said Faith, is that through Adventist Health is doing a match? So maybe that's expanded past the mental health field into the medical field as well.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, you said that Faith gave him, that you got a match from someone new.
Tapestry.
Oh, okay. So still mental health.
So I can provide a little context on why we have so many folks in our program with serious mental illness. It's because the grant agrees to target people or who have a serious mental illness or a substance use disorder.
That's one of the disabling factors for PSA.
Right. The grant application says that they give that's who they're going to target. It's not like this is the only population we serve. That's their target populations.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board on the COC funding for continuing care? Any public comment on that line 1A? Not seeing, we're going to move on to the ESG federal state funds. An update on the NOFA for this year, Veronica?
Yes. In the last office hours that HCD sponsored on ESG, they said that the NOFA will be released sometime in July. They didn't have a specific date, but the impression I got was it wasn't at the end of the month, so sometime mid-month. I wanted to specifically bring that up because we're going to need a funding review ad hoc committee. And I wanted to find out from you, Dan, or the group, or however we do that, if we want to have that group also focus on the RFP and the COC program, NOFO, that will be coming up, or if we want to have 3 separate groups.
I think one rating and ranking group would be the best. Don't you, Judy?
Mhm.
I mean, people can exclude themselves if they're applying for funding in one of the 3 rounds, but I don't see a need to create 3 ad hoc committees.
I expect or anticipate more applicants or respondents for the request for proposals than I do for ESG or COC. So we may need to approach that one differently.
Well, let's see how many applicants we come in and who ends up being on the ad hoc.
Okay.
Do
One
we
of the
need to
things that's
Ad
come
hoc
up,
before next meeting. Okay, so we're going to create the ad hoc today then. Do I got any volunteers?
I want to ask you how many people you want on an ad hoc per funding source.
5 is our goal usually.
Yeah,
We'll
5 to 7.
settle-
And you want them from this pool of people.
I need COC members. I'm gonna have at least 1 county employee representative, likely Jesse Van Forest from Adult and Aging Services, to represent the county side of it. But then we pull from the COC for the remaining, usually.
And what's the time commitment?
Since it's 3 competitions, it's usually about like an 8-hour period per each one. So we'll have like
Over what period of time?
Usually about a month.
So about 24 or more hours in a month.
No, they're not going to be at the same time.
I
We'll
mean
likely
total.
do.
I mean total.
About 8 hours. Usually it's a month, so we spend about 8 hours doing that in a combination of looking the applications offline. And then our meetings last typically 2 to 3 hours.
We usually have 2 to 3 meetings, and they're from 1 to 3 hours, depending on what the need is. And then there's reading and research, reading and other things outside of the committee meetings. But That's really it. And so we would likely do the ESG NOFA first, and then the request for proposal responses, and then the COC NOFO, as long as HUD doesn't throw me off and come out early. Judy, you want to volunteer?
Yeah, I could volunteer.
Veronica, I'm thinking of helping, but not under the ones that we might apply for.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
I'll help you, Veronica.
Oh, I already had you down.
I figured you did.
And this is open to COC members, not just board members. So I'll reach out to Denise Gorney. She usually is willing to participate.
Or you can send it out to the group in general too, if you want to.
Okay.
Any questions on the ESG NOFA that's coming out mid-July? Any public input on the mid-July release of the ESG NOFA? Not seeing you. We're gonna move to projects, which there's none listed. Is there any projects / announcements from anybody on the COC board?
We're
Okay, not-
accepting nominations for our vacancies, as far as I know, unless we decide to do something different in the near future.
As of right now, we're still accepting nominations. We're accepting nominations no matter what. It's just a matter of how many of them we're gonna have.
And I should have moved the HMIS capacity building grant up into updates for the board, because I forgot to mention that it's completed. We've completed everything that HUD is required, so I'm going to remove it from the agenda starting next month unless someone objects.
That's fine. That's fine.
HEAP has completed as far as the spending term is considered, but there's still projects that are using those funds. So do we want to keep it? That was the logic, but I thought I'd revisit it. Dan probably shouldn't make that decision, as RCHDC is a recipient of those funds.
I'm not saying anything.
Shouldn't we keep it on until we close it out? Or are you thinking after everything is awarded, we wouldn't need to have it on our agenda? Is that what you're questioning, Veronica?
Well, everything's awarded and spent. But those projects, the Plateau and Ore Creek Commons 2, they're still in operation. And so that funding has been spent and the project has been closed out by the state. But we kept it on the agenda so the COC could continue to receive updates on those 2 permanent supportive housing projects.
So couldn't in that expectation for ongoing information about those projects, couldn't we just ask that they give us an annual report or something and not kind of carry on like this? Was that a part? Dan, did you commit to that?
Yes, we
Yes.
committed to an annual report.
Yeah, it's usually in these contracts. So maybe we just have a time that, I think it's of interest to the rest of us to see how things are going. But I don't know that it deserves to be continuing to be on the list.
That's the way that I felt as well. And I
Okay.
wanted to
Yeah,
get a read from the board.
I agree that, we have a lot of COC projects that are funded through COC funds, and we don't have a spot for, specifically, like the HEAP had more than those 2 projects. B2 was also HEAP funded. I think Project Sanctuary was, so like having more regular reports from our COC funded projects seems beneficial to me, but not having just a standing item for a grant that no longer is relevant.
Okay, I will remove it as well. Thank you.
Okay, if that is all, there's no other comments. The next meeting is gonna be Monday, July 17th at 1:30. We won't change this one right after the meeting like we did last time because this is not a holiday. With that, I thank everybody for coming and I look forward to hearing your input on the board reconfiguration. And everybody have a good day.